Oh, wow. We are live. That is very exciting. Hello, everyone.
Another week has gone by. This really is a great marker of time.
Yes, this is true. This is true. I'm going to turn on Instagram right now.
Okay.
Our many followers, viewers join in. Actually, yeah. Hey, everyone. Just tuning in on Facebook. I'm trying to get this thing to work on Instagram.
Hey, Charlie.
Good to see you, Charlie. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. How is everyone tonight? Please. Here we go. Okay.
Okay, I got mine. You got yours?
All right. Yes. So tonight we're very excited. We have a very cool topic. We're talking about the world to come. As we mentioned in the past, we're trying to do this series on misconceptions of Judaism, and there's sometimes misconceptions around this topic, so we wanted to address those.
Yeah.
Besides that, it's been a good week. Yeah, things are good. Broncos. It's been a full week since we had a new general manager. I'm very excited. We'll go out and get Deshaun Watson. Make me very happy. So, yeah, a lot of good stuff. Anyway, so without further ado, can we help you? Okay, here. I'll be right back. I'm just going to tuck in my kids here. You want to take it, Sarah? Okay.
Yeah. So the Browns lost this week. But first, what I really wanted to say is, since this is such a fascinating topic that lots of people have different perspectives or there's a lot of misconceptions about the next world. Is there a next world? What does Judaism believe? Do we believe in reincarnation? So I wanted just to ask you guys to write in comments if you have any burning questions on the topic that you've really been wanting to know. We'd love to address them tonight if possible, and if not tonight, then another time. That's we really want to get to what you guys want to hear. So if you have any questions or...
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know any questions, things that you're wondering about. We'll dedicate a whole Live from the Bunker Season 2 episode to it. So just for you. So anyways, just to dig right in, we want to try to keep it, we want to keep it at the, I guess.
Sorry, my son's getting a call.
Anyway, so we want to keep it, to the appropriate length. But I really started thinking about this, most seriously a couple of years ago, a number of years ago, actually, a bunch of years. And a good friend of mine, was attending a college class, it's titled Judaism 101. He's as a Jew himself, it's kind of an easy A, learn about Judaism 101 in college. And one particular, class, he was told by the professor, just as a matter of fact, that Judaism doesn't believe in an afterlife. Just, very casually, that, Judaism, some religions maybe do believe in an afterlife, Judaism doesn't. And my friend was a little bit befuddled. He was perplexed because as himself a practicing observant Jew, that was not his understanding. And indeed, that is not the understanding of, a traditional approach, a Torah approach to Judaism. Over the last, several thousand years, we have certain assumptions and ideas that our rabbis have shared with us about our understanding of the reality of an afterlife. And it goes to say, without saying, I guess, that no one knows for sure exactly necessarily what it looks like. If you close the door, son,
I think you could get it. You could get the phone.
No, I need it.
We're just in the middle, or in a class right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't you? Okay. Well, let's just not do it right now.
I just need advice.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, whatever. I thought we moved into our new home. We have a separate room where we can do this, and indeed,
thank God we still have kids.
Thank God, interruptions. Yes, it's true. You're so much nicer than I am. I just get so annoyed. But anyway, so indeed, this is a, just back to this idea of the world to come, that it's something that, throughout the millennia has been fundamental to Judaism. Now, it is worth pointing out that, like I said, no one knows for sure exactly what it's like. It's one of the great mysteries. We have traditions from the rabbis and passages in the Talmud and a lot of ideas on it, and we'll share some of those with you. But suffice it to say that we do believe in a world to come, and we want to elaborate a little bit about that tonight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Great. Okay. So I think, we have a few just sources we want to share, just in case you're not aware. We understand sometimes when we read sources, it's not always so captivating or exciting. It'd be better if we're good with the technology. We do a little screen share, a little multimedia presentation.
Maybe one day we'll aspire to that.
Yes.
But in the meantime, if anyone has a chumash, it could be, this one is actually really cool because it's interlinear. So it shows you the English of each word. If anyone has the Torah, the chumash, you could turn to the first book, Bereshis or Genesis, chapter 2, verse 3, 7. Okay, we're going to look at it in a minute, but just if you want to follow along, you don't have to, but if you want to, we're just reading a little tiny bit. But if you want to follow along, sometimes it's cool just to see it inside in the source. So feel free to grab your chumash, your 5 books of Moses, and go to Genesis chapter 2, verse 7.
And just as you're pulling that up, again, because we just want to establish, the classical sources that allude to a world to come. So the Rambam, Maimonides, actually writes very clearly when he establishes his 13 principles of Jewish faith. I'll just share, I think, principles, 12, 11, and 13. But among those are that a famous song that very movingly, actually, Jews were reported to have sang as they marched to the death camps. But the words are Ani mamin be'emuna shalema bevias hamashiach v'af al pi she'ismameim kol zeh chakela b'chol yom sheyavo. I believe with perfect faith in the coming of the Mashiach. We have this idea of the Mashiach, a descendant of King David himself, one day, God willing, very, very soon into the future, will come and kind of fix things up for us and redeem the Jewish people and humanity. So,
do you want to share with us how the song goes?
I'm a little bit shy among so many people with my voice, but it's a nice song. It's a very nice song. A lot of different tunes. You can go into iTunes, Apple Music, type in Ani Ma'amin, you'll find a lot of beautiful tunes. There's another statement of our faith established by the Rambam where he says that, again, that's regarding the messianic aspect of the world to come. But the world to come, our afterlife, meaning it's a broad topic. So that's one element of it. Another element is what happens after we die. So says the Rambam, I believe with perfect faith that the Creator returns good to those who observe His commandment and takes into account those who transgress his commandments. So there's this idea of reward for the good things we do and an accounting for the negative things that we do. And then finally, this is number 13. We actually say this every day when we pray in our Shemona Esrei, in our prayer. We say this 3 times a day. We invoke this idea as God, that we believe with perfect faith that there will eventually be a resurrection of the dead at the time that God desires, and forever His presence will be known. So that's we'll establish kind of where all of these stages fit, in the big scheme of things. But these are, again, just statements that the Rambam says are fundamental to Jewish faith, which is just interesting. Perhaps people are not aware of that.
Yeah. Can I digress for a short second? Just a minute. Just this last one that you read. I actually just heard a beautiful idea from a Rebbitzin here in town, Esti Schwab. She shared actually that she heard somewhere that actually when we pray 3 times a day, there's a line related to this in the silent prayer, in the Amida. And so it says, it uses the language, I have faith in the Tchias HaMesim, in the resurrection of the dead. So she heard this in regards to parenting, actually, that when you have faith in your children, it's like you're like bringing life into them, right? When your children or in anyone, when you see the goodness of another person, you're allowing them to live their potential. And so it's like resurrection of the dead, because if they're not living their potential, right? It's like, why are we here? So I think it ties in very practically and beautifully also to everyday life, that that believing in people, we're doing our own mini version of this resurrection of the dead.
Beautiful. Yeah, I love that. And it's also kind of cool to think about. I'm kind of, one of the sad things about our move is by our garbage bin in our old house, there was like a rose bush, and roses would just magically pop up in tulips. And it's like, it's crazy. You think about it. It's like, it is, all winter, like right now, it's like rotten in the ground. It's dead. And then suddenly in the spring, it just sprouts forth the most beautiful, like majestic colors and life. And that's helped like strengthen my faith in that, in this idea of the resurrection of the dead. And we see this every single spring, after the plants have rotted away, basically, and then it sprouts back to life on its own. So,
but who knows? Maybe we'll find some surprises come spring in our new house too.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Actually, that would be amazing. So I think what we wanted to basically do is, I guess before we, I think we just wanted to establish, the basics of who we are, and then we want to share the journey that we all go on in the eternal lifespan of us, so to speak. So,
should we tie in the other idea first with the grading?
No, maybe not.
No?
Maybe later.
Okay.
We'll do it soon. Okay. Okay. So I think what we're trying to express is that we are, you and me and everyone here, all thousands of us watching this, we are the combination of sometimes people ask, like, in Judaism, do we believe that you have a soul? Some of you probably know this, but you can throw it in the chat. Do we believe that you have a soul? Is that something we believe in Judaism? I know there's a little delay, so we can wait a minute while the question catches up to real time. In Judaism, do we believe you have a soul? I'm going to assume people maybe type it in. Don't be shy. I feel like I'm teaching on Zoom, and I'm asking people to throw things in the chat. People are often shy about that. But anyway, so Charlie says, yes, in Judaism, we do believe we have a soul. He's close, but
there definitely is the concept of the soul. The question is, how do we relate to our soul? And how do we define ourselves?
Oh, good. Okay, so this is great. So Charlie says yes. Jeremiah says, some believe we have two souls. Perhaps you're referring to the nefesh and neshama, deep Kabbalistic ideas. I don't want to. There's
also levels of the soul. Or maybe you're talking about Shabbos when there's like an extra piece.
Right. And Eric says, actually, no. We don't believe we have a soul. So it could be, Eric, I don't know if you've heard this before, if we're on the same page. But I think you're right. Why? We don't believe you have a soul. You believe you are a soul.
That's an essential part of you, right? Like, how do you define yourself? Do you look in the mirror and say, this is me, and that's who I am? Or do you look in the mirror and say, this is what I look like, but there's a deeper me behind that? And I think that's so fundamental in so many aspects of Judaism. And living a Jewish life is just to understand who are we. It affects how we relate to others, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to how we dress, or how we relate to anything that we do, or our goals or our focus is really dependent on, first, how we define ourselves and how we connect to the world that we live in.
Exactly. Yeah, that's beautiful. And yes. Okay. And Jeremiah, he means the nefesh bahami, and the beautiful. Excellent. Yes. And that's exactly it. That we think that at our core, the me, the I, is this, like, what is the me? Am I my beautiful beard? Am I my my receding hairline? Or what am I? Am I the trillions of bacterium in my microbiome?
Mm-hmm. Do I define myself by my hair, which isn't even really mine?
Getting deep there. Okay. Yes. Beautiful.
But also, just one other thing about this is that what part of us is our soul? So I heard that it's actually a beautiful idea that I don't quite understand fully, but our thoughts that come into us are coming like that's our soul in action, is our soul connecting to something higher, and it's bringing us these ideas and our thoughts, and these higher thoughts that we have. I don't know,
no, that's
for
beautiful.
what it's worth.
And in fact, this idea again that so what you're looking at right here is a soul, which is eternal, as we're about to see from a passage in the Torah. It's this eternal soul, which is in this very beautiful body that God gifted me, which I'm very thankful for. I'm kind of joking. I mean, I'm just trying to be obnoxious a little bit. Okay, this body. So the soul.
For those of you who don't know him well enough.
Yeah. All right. So the soul, and the combination. Was that really necessary to turn the computer on?
Should I?
Yeah. Okay.
It's
we'll see
okay.
you. Okay. Bye. Okay. Anyway. So what you see here is a soul in this body, a soul in this body. That's what we are. The soul, as we're about to see, is eternal. Yeah. And the body, God willing, is going to have 120 years. And we are that combination. So further ado, let's just look at a few verses in the Torah that allude to this, honestly, from really the very beginning.
Yeah, cool. So this is chapter 2, which is pretty early on if you consider how many chapters are in this book. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're still in the creation story. So chapter 2, verse 7, if you found it. And Hashem God formed the man out of dust from the ground, and he blew into his nostrils the soul of life, and man became a being that is alive. So we're seeing here that how did we get our souls? How did our body and soul come together? Hashem, God created our bodies, and then he took his breath and blew into us through our nostrils life, and that is the soul.
Which emerges that the soul that is within us is part of God himself.
Yeah.
And God who's eternal, that's pretty awesome. That we have that spark of eternity and holiness and godliness within us, which is pretty cool.
Right. So the ramifications of that is like, how do I relate to myself? I'm not just me, an earthly person. I'm also have a piece of God in me. And once we relate to ourselves that way, then we can truly see others that way also, and treat others with the respect that they deserve just for being alive, even if nothing else. Yes.
Right. And that's like sometimes hard to love other people, but you focus on that godliness within them. It's almost like a love of God, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the Chizkuni, the commentary on the Torah, actually says that the neshama, he says, he chaya leolam, lives forever. It's eternal. Mesa b'musaguf, b'mavasaguf. It doesn't die when the body dies. So we have this commentary, the Chizkuni, who just develops this idea further, and he just says what that means. Again, that means God is eternal, our soul is eternal, and it survives death. So that when a person dies, their soul is still very much alive. And, and we'll try to understand how rabbis understand what happens at that point. Yes. Cool. Very good. So, so basically, it's brought down in the, we understand that, this is also perhaps the idea that we're created b'tselem Elokim, in God's image. Like we're created out of his very breath, which is pretty cool. So we're created literally out of God's breath, and that is a pretty empowering idea. We're b'tselem Elokim, and in addition, so the way that this basically works is that the Kabbalah teaches that before, our souls have been created from the beginning of time. God's eternal. And we're kind of just like basking, hanging out until we're ready to go for our mission. And I know we've talked about this before.
In the world of the souls, right?
Yeah. We're like, I think some say we were under God's kisei hakavod, his throne, so to speak, of glory. And God kind of shows them both paths we can go to. Gan Eden, the good path where we want to end up, and we call Gehenna more the not such good path that we don't want to end up. And then at some point, God imbues our soul with a mission, an earthly mission that it can't fulfill when it's just basking up in God's presence, under the throne of under God's throne. Very Kabbalistic ideas. I don't quite fully grasp that. But so that's when we're born, right? So whenever you are born, whatever your birthday is, that is when the mission of your soul came into existence.
Yeah, that's what they say. Your birthday is a day that God decided the world could no longer exist without you.
And tomorrow, by the way, is the English birthday of our daughter Dvora, the big one. So very excited. Her Hebrew birthday was, I believe, a couple days ago. But be that as it may, we go through this world. We try to fulfill our mission. The soul basically needs the body to do anything. As we said, it can't, because the body's physical. The body can do mitzvos, can show kindness to people, can help people, can make a difference in this world, and that elevates the soul. So
partners, they work together.
Exactly. After 120 years, God willing, a nice, long, ripe life, the time of that mission ends. Hopefully we've fulfilled that mission. That's always the hope. And what happens then is that the neshama, the soul, parts from the, it goes in and it leaves the body. And the body goes back into the ground from which it was formed. Because as we read in the story of creation, man was formed out of dust of the earth. And the Torah says, until dust, will you ultimately return. And God, who blew in his breath into that dust, so to speak, he kind of recalls, retrieves the soul back to this, world of soul. So basically, and Jeremiah, I'm just saying your question, the decision about what happens on your birthday. So
I think maybe, can I answer that? So like when you're talking about God, time and space doesn't exist at all, and certainly not the way that we know it. So the day you're born to the world is the day that the world needs you to be born. But yes, the process in the womb is this whole, it has to happen preliminary, obviously, to lead up to that.
Yeah.
So it's all part of the puzzle and the bigger picture. But that day that you were born is like that moment is when you are needed in the world.
Now we do believe that like stuff happens even like in utero, like God declares who your soulmate is, like in utero, like
learning
so there's still like stuff going on in utero. But I guess the moment that you're born, it's interesting because when a child is born, he's not called necessarily a viable child till he's 30 days old, at which point the firstborn gets redeemed. We wait till they're 30 to make sure that they become viable, healthy child after 30 days. Yeah.
Wait, in the womb or once born?
Once born.
Oh, okay.
So really until a child's born, I guess we don't necessarily know its mission, and even before it's born, there's all sorts of spiritual things that happen, as well. Very, very deep stuff going on over here. I do want to give a shout out to my prized Talmud, joining us on YouTube.
Oh,
my man, Doira Channel. I guess that's the name he goes by. Doira Channel. This one's for you, my man. My prized Talmud, my first period class. Great that he's joining us from YouTube. So we're all over the place. Anyway, so back here. So
it's interesting because you know one more thing about in the womb that I just think is so beautiful. That when there's this soul, this child, this baby, as I really believe it is in the womb, it's sent out to the world, and it doesn't want to go because in the womb it's like it's so comfortable, it has everything it needs. But when a soul is sent into this world, it knows that this world is confusing, right? There's so much. There's the physical and the spiritual. And throughout our life, we have to continually work on maintaining a balance and whatever balance is necessary for our purpose in that moment. But it's just so challenging living in this world. And the soul acknowledges that and like doesn't want that challenge. Because what if, God forbid, a soul doesn't fulfill its mission? So I don't know. I just think I feel like that's like, very touching. Yeah.
I think like souls, they're like skeptical to come down here. It's like they're kind of happy up there, and this is a world of great struggle and challenge and materialism, and the soul is pristine and godly, and is kind of happy over there. It's like,
Mhm.
I'm good,
Right. But through those struggles and all the decisions the body and the soul have to make together, and that's how we grow and achieve in this world. And that's
Yeah.
why we're sent here, is to go through all that and to become greater. And that brings us towards our purpose. But it's still like a scary, different reality for the soul to be living in.
Exactly. So therefore, after that 120 years, just to come back, the soul goes back up to what we call the world of souls. There's some kind of like reckoning that goes on over there. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. And really, that's what the Kabbalah, a lot of the commentators, the Ramchal among them, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto says, that's kind of where the soul stays for a while, until ultimately there's going to be one day like a final reunion. And the Rambam describes this, and we'll see if we get into some of these sources a bit later, but it's very much a spiritual reality. So when we think about life after death, at least immediately, it's like spiritual. It's not like a physical kind of thing at that point in time. Now, there will be a point in the future, which we haven't hit yet in our existence, where the soul, after it's gone through a refinement period, and the body has been kind of refined back into the ground. It's very interesting, by the way, the Ramchal, very Kabbalistic idea. He says, due to Adam's sin in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve's sin, we have this like blemish, like it totally messed everything up. We're meant to just achieve perfect unity of body and soul if only they chose right, and they got it wrong. That created a blemish, I guess, kind of in the soul and body. And therefore, after we die, we can never reach perfection in this world. After we die, the soul gets up and gets a cleaning, and the body goes down and gets taken apart, and that blemish gets purged out. And then at some point in the future, both of them in their cleansed state will reemerge together. And that's what we call the Trias Amesim, the resurrection of the dead, which many assume is the final ultimate state where we're living as physical beings in this ultimate world to come. So when we think about the world to come, there's actually kind of like two references of what that means.
Maybe there's different stages of it.
Different stages. One is the world of souls, all spiritual, the Rambam writes. And the second is more of the physical after the resurrection of the dead. So it's just interesting concept there. Okay. So I guess, maybe the next thing that we can just expand upon a little bit would be, how do we assume, what happens exactly after a person, takes leave of this world? And, just it's very interesting that I've heard a beautiful example that if you imagine, twins, okay, you have twins in utero, they're in their mother's womb. And all they know for their entire, 8.5 months of existence is that comfort of that womb. I guess as twins is a little bit crowded, but as they grow more, but everything is, perfect for them. All the nourishment goes straight to their belly button. Everything's great. And then comes 8.5 months, 9 months, and things get a little squeezed, suddenly it starts contracting, everything's shaking up.
It's like an earthquake.
It's like an earthquake, and they're freaking out. They're terrified about what exactly is going on and what's happening. So you imagine one of those twins, the one who's left behind, suddenly their companion leaves leaves, just bounces, and is born. And he's terrified. His companion is gone. And when that companion's on its way out, it's like, what's going on? This is nuts. But we know that fetus is now embarking to a more real life than what it had before to this world. And I forgot who gave this example, but that's kind of how we view us in this world. We're like in the uterus, so to speak, in the womb, and things shake up. God willing, after 120, toward the end, it's scary. It's unknown. We can't even fathom it. But there is something going on there. And our soul is freed and going on to this more spiritual, deeper, eternal existence than what it has right now. So that's just like an interesting thing to consider, that kind of metaphor of leaving a womb, that's kind of how we view the process of death. And
so interesting.
Yeah. And exactly. And it's interesting, actually, there's this idea in Judaism that, after we got on a long life, it's scary because there's so much unknown of that transition. Family members, loved ones are meant to be with that person as they transition into that more spiritual realm. So that's just an interesting halacha that we have in Judaism, that there should be someone with the person.
Yeah, they say also, the more we are attached to our physical selves and our stuff in this world, everything this worldly, the harder it is, that process of the body and soul ripping apart. When someone's, focus and their goals are more spiritual, then it's just very smooth. It's just moving into the next world, as opposed to prying the soul away from everything it's come to really value throughout its life in this world.
Exactly. Yeah. No, for sure. That's right. And it's very sobering thought. You don't take your possessions with you, to this next journey that we go on. And the more connected we are to those possessions, simply the harder it is to, the harder it is for us to transition.
And that's a reality, because what we build for ourselves and who we are in this world, that's what we take with us to the next world.
Yeah, exactly. And R.A. Kaplan, a great recent Kabbalist who died probably several decades ago, a really brilliant thinker, and he basically elaborates that when a soul finally does part ways with the body, as we said, it's a very scary, confusing time. And we assume that in his own words, I think, the disembodied soul is intensely aware of the physical surroundings of the body, especially before it's buried. And this is one of the reasons that we have what we call a shomer for a body at all times. When someone dies, we try to have someone with it, saying the words of Psalms at all times until burial.
And this is an interesting topic on its own, actually. And maybe we'll even, if there's interest, we can have a special guest. We can dedicate a whole episode to,
that idea of death and burial and what happens with all that. Yeah, the Chevra Kadisha and the whole process is very interesting. Yeah. And while this is all going down, actually, it says in the book of Job and Eov, there's something very interesting that happens in which the soul literally mourns over the body. And yeah, did you want to read the verse, everyone? Keep you awake here.
You gotta have participation, right? He feels only the pain of his flesh, and his spirit mourns him.
Right. So we see this idea that the spirit, the soul, the nafsho alav ta'avel, the soul is grieving over the decline of the body, over the death. The soul is still there, grieving kind of over its plight, over what happened.
And that's because the body and soul have come together so intensely throughout that lifetime, working together, that the separation can be very difficult.
Exactly. So again, what we're doing right now is we're just like describing the process of our soul from birth now until we're up to death. And there is this idea that until the body decomposes, there's not yet a permanent resting place for the soul. The soul is in this kind of pain, seeing the state of the body decomposing, and it's in this psychological anguish of just sensing the earthly habitation of it now in a state of total decay. This is what the Kabbalah refers to as a term called chibut hakever, which is like the pounding of the grave, which you assume is not quite as horrible necessarily for the righteous people, again, who never viewed their earthly existence as overly important. They kind of kept things in perspective of the ultimate importance of this world versus the next, and possessions in this world versus spiritual gains in the next. Now, so this is kind of what happens again in the immediate aftermath of death. And then every year on the anniversary of the death, the soul is judged anew. This is actually what we call a yortzeit. The yortzeit is the anniversary of the death of a soul, at which point it gets judged.
So, what question could you ask about this? Why does the soul get judged again after its body and soul have split? Why would it continue to be judged every year once it's not in this world?
And something we didn't elaborate on so much, but there's this idea that when you die, there is that reckoning with God.
Yeah.
And basically the Mishnah tells us about this, but in Pirkei Avos, but it's kind of scary because we're being recorded. It's kind of like people rabbis compare it when Joseph comes forth to his brothers and he says, "Ani Yosef, ha'od avich, I am Joseph. Are my brothers? Is my father still alive?" It's like there was nothing that the brothers could say. They were stunned. They couldn't say anything because they were so filled with shame of what they did. There was no arguments to be made, and to some extent, we have that. It's a very scary thought. This reckoning. And I want to get it right. We've got to live our lives wanting to get that meeting right.
Yeah.
But like God's gonna look. Let's see what the film says. I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just going to, I just let's go back to the film. Let's see what the film all says.
Which is interesting because in this day and time when we have video so easily accessible and anything happens, right? And everyone's taking video and pulls out their phones, and we have cameras in buildings and houses, and there's just like it's easier for us to imagine that everything that we do, say, is being recorded for later use.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird fact. I might be sharing a little bit too much, but we're among friends here. We're sitting right now in our study in the new. Thank God we have the nice little room. We can get away and do this. And in our new place, one thing that we downgraded was actually closet space.
Yeah.
So I took one for the team, and my closet sits here in this office that we're in right now. And I don't know why exactly, but somehow we set up like a Ring video here in the office. I think actually to monitor if our kids ever need like a camera. I think it's in case our kids need like computer time that we just keep our eye that they're using it in an appropriate kind of way. And one day, I'm just kind of getting dressed, and I'm like, I look over, and the camera's rolling, and it's like on. It's a very like sobering. It was just a weird thing, but that's kind of our life. Is like
That's where it even teaches us how to get dressed, right? And how to put on our shoes and put your left hand in,
it's a good reminder,
left leg in first, and then
it's a good reminder.
It's all encompassing. Yeah.
Exactly. So anyway, so the question that we're asking is if you're getting judged immediately after death, why do you need to get judged once again every year after the anniversary of your death?
Oh, good question. Yeah. So the answer is, and I think it's a really beautiful idea, is that we do actions in our lives, right? And sometimes they have immediate effects, and sometimes they have effects that we see later on. But then there's what's it called? The residual, the
compound interest, almost. It's like compound interest, right?
It's like if
you put that investment in now,
and
it just grows exponentially in the future.
Right. So like a very simple example is if you smile at someone and they smile at someone and it just keeps going, or that affects someone in a certain way, like your actions
went viral.
Yeah. What they're still doing in the world after you leave, their effect is how you're judged every year. So what imprint are you going to leave on the world? Exactly, Charlie. It's long-term effects, which is cool. That it acknowledges, like, right, everyone wants to have I'm at a loss for words. What's the word? I don't know what it's called. It's late. Like they want to see what's going to be the effect once I leave this world, right? What effect am I going to leave? What imprint? What organization am I going to, give my estate should benefit from, so that, you know what I mean? Like everyone wants to leave their mark on the world, I think is what I'm trying to say. So that is a very real thing, and we can leave our mark on the world. And Judaism recognizes that because there's this idea of this yahrzeit of every year rejudging. How is that mark legacy? That's the word I was looking for. Thanks, Charlie. How is that mark doing, right? Like, is it it's just so cool because you can still benefit from all this good that hasn't even happened yet. And then it just keeps coming good and good and good. And then you get to continually benefit from it.
All right, so what emerges is that every year after a person has left this world, their soul is in a different place, right? Because all all the residual, good things that had happened out of their actions move them up. And God forbid any negative imprint that they made pulls them down. So if you slandered someone and that ruined their life in all these ways, but that wasn't realized yet at the time of your death, but maybe that's only realized a year later, so you're held accountable for that too.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning you're not in the same place you were when you died, because the results of your actions continues to carry on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why on a yard site, that's why a person is judged every year on the anniversary to assess where you're at. Which, by the way, is why there's a custom for family members to go ahead and, because it's a judgment day for the soul, they do things in the merit of the soul. They give tzedakah, they learn Torah, they make blessings in honor, because the awesome thing about being alive is we can elevate our soul now on my own. I don't need anyone else. But after a soul leaves the body, it can't help itself anymore, and it relies on its loved ones to do good things for it, and I guess the result of its own life. And that's why on the yard site there's that custom where people say Kaddish, and they do all these things to elevate the soul, which again the soul can no longer do for itself.
And it can be a very meaningful way to commemorate the soul, but also to benefit it and to give to that person who's no longer there.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot to say, and I don't think necessarily we're going to finish everything we had in mind tonight. So we'll see where this next part takes us. But we do have very vivid descriptions in our rabbinic literature about the joy of the world to come, which is very interesting. And Rabbi Eliyahu Dessler describes it, very vividly. And actually, before we do that, we should even maybe just discuss even what Pirkei Avos says. And Ethics of Our Fathers. Shout out to my man's Isaac and Adam and Josh, three fellows that I learn every week. We learn Pirkei Avos together. It's amazing, and we actually none of us reached this far yet. Isaac and I are going to get there soon. We're in the 4th chapter. Adam and I are holding, I think, in the 3rd chapter. We just finished the 2nd one last week, and Josh and I are making our way up into the 1st chapter. But anyway, so shout out to those gentlemen there learning this with me. It's amazing. I highlighted my week. But the so Pirkei Avos says in the 4th chapter. You want to take it away?
Yeah, he says, Rabbi Yaakov says, this world is like a hallway before the world to come. Fix yourself in the hallway so that you may enter the drawing room.
So that's kind of deep over there, right? This world that we are in right now, it's just like an ancillary hallway.
It's not a destination. It's just the place to help us to get to where we're trying to go.
Right, no one wants to just go to the hallway to just be and enjoy the hallway. Right? You're in the hallway to get you somewhere else.
That's the idea of a hallway.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So you have to prepare yourself. It says in Hebrew, hasken atzmecha. It's like correct yourself. Prepare yourself in the hallway so that you're ready to go when you get inside. It's kind of like when I get home, I should do more of this, but before I come in, I should straighten myself up before I enter the home, with my family, my lovely wife. You have to prepare yourself, before you get into the destination. So that was Mishnah 16. In Mishnah 17, you want to read. He elaborates a little bit more about the world to come and what it's like there.
Okay, so he would say 1 hour of repentance and good deeds in this world is better than all the time in the world to come, and 1 hour of pleasure in the world to come is better than all the time in this world. Wow. So the pleasure and let's just stick with that for now. The pleasure that's in the world to come, it's so hard for us to fathom. Can I just keep going with this?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Rav Dessler and others say that if you take all the hours of joy, right, that you've experienced, and everyone in your family and your friends and your neighbors, all that joy, and you compound it into one moment, can you imagine how much joy would be in that one moment?
It would be like the moment I felt when the Broncos signed Peyton Manning, and if they end up signing Deshaun Watson, please God, let that happen, or trading for him, and the moment that my children were born and I got married, and then combining that. Yeah, sorry. I wanted to give some examples.
Yeah, it's great. No, combine that. I
wanted
wasn't
to
sure where
speak.
you were going with it.
I wanted to speak Deshaun Watson into existence in the Denver Bronco uniform. Keep going. I'm sorry.
Okay, fine.
I'm tweeting at him furiously. Like, okay, sorry. Keep going.
You have to film in later.
He's a great quarterback that, with God's help, will be in a Denver Bronco uniform soon.
Cool.
I mean, okay, keep going.
Okay, so if you take all that joy, and then you take all the joy of everyone, right, and you bring all that happiness together, it doesn't even compare. How does he phrase it here? And all of human history, not just everyone living in the world, but all of human history, all the joy and all the happiness in the whole world, and you put that together, it's not even a whiff of the pleasure in the world to come. I heard another example. If you take a king, right, a monarch who supposedly has everything, right, and imagine like how much joy they have and all their stuff. I don't know. There's so much joy. I don't know. I like this example.
Yeah.
But
and the interesting thing, by the way, is that again in the Hebrew it says that Yafeh Sha'achas, beautiful is one moment, of a koras ruach, which is a little bit lost in the English translation, but koras ruach is a whiff, a smell. So like I walked home today and I smelled this awesome smell of this great food that you were making. It smelled awesome. We're eating like this cool stuff in the new Instapot. And it was like awesome. And just that smell from the outside, okay? I mean, that's what he's saying here. That's what the mission is saying. It is the whiff from the outside. You're not even in yet. Mm-hmm. That whiff from outside is greater than all these pleasures we can imagine. That's like, I'm sorry. Rabbi Dessler actually speaks that out. Maybe we should quote him. Yeah? There's good words there?
Yeah. Do you want to just
so he says, what is a spiritual bliss that we speak of? It is a whiff. In Rabbi Dessler's awesome words, a destitute, ravenously hungry pauper, beggar, passes the royal palace on the eve of the gala ball. Uninvited, he cannot partake of the sumptuous cuisine. He must make do with the delectable and teasing aroma that wafts out into the street. One who does not deserve a real and full taste of the bliss of the world to come may be given a diminutive form of that joy, a fleeting whiff of its aroma. And yet that whiff is greater, more enjoyable, enduring, and meaningful than all the happiness in this world, like in all of human history. That's pretty intense.
Yeah.
So it's helpful, I guess, to keep that perspective of like that kind of intense joy that awaits us. It's like the smell of a fresh challah, as Charlie says. Yes, that's exactly it. So
the other part,
what's up?
The other part about the goals.
Yeah, definitely. I think we could probably pull it off. We're going to try, as always, keep it under an hour. But yeah, we can elaborate a little bit about some of the practical applications of all this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is there anything else you want to finish there before we get into it?
No.
Okay, fine. So we talked last week. We brought up this story how Alan Dershowitz, if anyone's heard of him, how he's a Harvard professor, and he was one of the lawyers on trial in the Dream Team, not the Dream Team that I learned about from your father.
Right, not Michael Jordan's Dream Team.
But the Dream Team for O.J. Simpson. And there was actually a class he was teaching on comparative religions with another professor, and he decided to give God a grade, right? We talked about this last week, and he gave God the grade of a B-. So it's interesting that, okay, I can hear where that's coming from, because it's a beautiful world and there's so much good, but there's also suffering and there's war and there's pain, and this world doesn't seem perfect. But there's one thing that's missing. What's missing from that? Before you judge something, you have to understand what's the goal, right? Someone could come in, I just thought of this example. Someone could walk in our house at supper time and be like, what is this on the table? I would never eat that, right? But maybe they don't realize that our goal tonight was to have like a super healthy supper. It wasn't to be the most delicious thing in the world. It was just to have something really healthy and different. And actually soaked red lentils. You soak a cup of red lentils in a cup and a half of water, throw in a teaspoon of curry and half a teaspoon of salt, and you soak that for an hour, and then you blend it, and it gets like a paste, and then you fry it kind of like pancakes, and you get red lentil tortillas. And that's one of the things that we had for supper tonight. And like, Ray, I could so picture like, what is this?
We had some interesting stuff. It was awesome. Right. But we're trying to, do this kind of funky, healthy stuff right now,
And it's fun, but that was our goal.
If you think the goal was like a regular, delicious, like pasta dinner, you'd be very upset and disappointed with what you saw.
Definitely.
But that wasn't the goal.
Right. So that's like, I gave you the recipe so you can make it yourself.
Yeah, Jeremiah, we got you. We'll share the recipe after the class in the show notes.
Yeah. But that's the idea, that when Alan Dershowitz was giving the world a grade, I don't think he really had the goal in mind, because what is the goal of this world, right? As we just said, this world is a hallway. The goal of this world is not to have, like, in a hedonistic way, the ultimate pleasure. We are not beings that are here in order to have lots of pleasure. That's not why we're here. Do we have lots of pleasure while we're here? Yes. But like, you go to eat, right? And you have a delicious meal, but after 3 bites, right? That's what the science says. After 3 bites, you don't even like taste what you're eating anymore. It's just those first maybe 3 bites that you really enjoy. And then you're eating it. And then what happens? You get full. We are not beings meant for like the ultimate pleasure. That's not why we were created.
And one of the nature's like material pleasures, like there's never quite enough. Like we always want more,
Yeah.
We're never satiated with it.
And then it's fleeting, right? Like it comes and then I'm hungry again. And then what?
Yeah.
It's just constantly, if we were just here to have pleasure, we would just be spending our whole life chasing pleasure.
Right. But when we appreciate that that's not the purpose of this world, what the Kabbalah calls, I think, the Olam HaAsiya, the world of doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the Olam of like basking and chilling. I think we gave the example last week of like a schwitz. A schwitz is like the world to come. There's no question, right? You just lay it out, get a schmeiss. Did we talk about the schmeiss last week?
No.
So. Okay, I'm a little tangent here, but you want to know what the world to come is? Go into that JCC schwitz. Hopefully, it's open. It's probably not because of COVID, but there's no bacteria that can live there. I promise you that. In 100 and some whatever it is. But anyway, whatever. That is pleasure. I'm saying you're just laid out there. Guy gives you a schmeiss, takes that seaweed, mixes it in hot, soapy water. He gives you a schmeiss. Like that's it. But to do that, you're meant to actually go through the process. You got to go like to the gym first. You got to work out. Meaning like there's a whole process first. And this world is the world of asiya. It's the world of doing. It's the world of action. This is not the world to, where that's the goal. Now, as you said, and it's important to point this out, we're meant to experience pleasure.
Yeah.
A life is meant to be pleasurable. It can be pleasurable. Judaism, Rav Noach Weinberg describes various levels of pleasure. I think one of the awesome things about Judaism, by the way, it's like a huge idea, right? Is that holiness in Judaism is not being a recluse, where you take what we said way too seriously. You take it to the extreme, and we don't mean this, but like, oh, I'm a soul. I'm going to just go bask on a mountaintop and just like be spiritual for the rest of my days. We're in a physical body, and we elevate. So Judaism is basically elevating the material and making it holy. So how do we bring in the Holy Sabbath? With wine. Wine could be used for something else.
Clothes, put on tablecloths.
Right. We have this thing called Oneg Shabbos. Oneg means delight. You have a nice cholent. You have some drinks, delicious challah. You're meant to enjoy. You really are. So we don't mean to deny that. And
Judaism also really gives us a framework to be able to, I think, get intense joy from the pleasures of this world, because it teaches us to enjoy them with discipline and with balance. And it's to the extent that we do that, that I think it really brings, instead of overindulgence, it just brings pleasure.
Right. That's beautiful. Right.
Yeah.
And you don't withhold it ever. The pleasure is diminished.
There's no
It's gotta
contrast. We need a
there's no
contrast, right?
yeah.
Like if it was always allowed to have chocolate, right? That's like the thing with your kids. They say like, if you never give your kids chocolate, then or candy, then they're going to go to their friend's house and they're just going to want it and want it and want it. But if you always give your kids chocolate and candy, then it won't be like so special for them anymore, and it won't be such a big deal. And I think, that's like finding this balance. And I think that Judaism really helps us find that balance so we can have the candy and we can appreciate it and not overindulge in it. There's
100%.
a beautiful parable then for this world and the next world, is that imagine you have a building, right? A big building that's a gym, and it's also a spa. Okay, so one door is to the gym, and there's all these, everyone's in there lifting and whatever they do in the gym.
We lift things, heavy things,
and their expressions, and they're sweating, right? And the other side is a spa. Okay, and one guy, he walks in and he goes, "This is the worst spa I've ever been to in my life. What are you guys doing? You're supposed to be laying down and resting." And I don't even know what they do in a spa either, but I don't know, putting cucumbers on their eyes. And but that's the idea, is he walked into the gym. He went into the gym expecting it to be a spa. If we go into this world expecting it to be a world of hedonistic pleasure, the world is here to give me the greatest pleasure, then it's the wrong goal. That's not what the world was built for. Then we're judging this world as if it were meant to be a spa, but it's not meant to be a spa. It's meant to be a gym, and it's a spiritual gym to help us to grow, because we're in this world to become huge, right? Like you like to do in the gym. So that's what we're here for. And how do we become huge? This is the world of asiya, of doing. We have to do. We have to use our physical bodies as an asset to be able to do mitzvahs and to do good and bring good into the world. And that's the role of this world. So then the next world, that's the spa, really. And that's all about, it's not about doing. We can't do anymore because we don't have our physical bodies to allow us to do.
Yeah.
We're just there for that ultimate pleasure. And so if you grade each one according to their goals, I think it would be very different.
Yeah, 100%. And maybe to just end with a beautiful parable that the Chofetz Chaim says, which to me I thought was pretty profound. If you imagine, right, and as Jeremiah points out, the spa is even better after the workout. Now I must confess, sometimes I do the rabbi workout where I skip the workout and I just go straight to the schwitz. I work up a sweat. I come home, I work up a sweat, and that's not the way to do it, because he's right. Meaning you could take the chairlift, to the top, or you could hike the top. And when you hike the top is much better.
Yeah, and I knew that. He wants to give us the ultimate pleasure. So he created this whole world first so that we appreciate everything that we've earned and everything that we're getting in the next world. Because otherwise it would just be a free gift, right? But when you work for something, you really appreciate it that much more. And it's that much more pleasurable.
Exactly. Just to end with this famous metaphor that the Chofetz Chaim says, just to understand this world versus the next world, that he describes that if you imagine for a moment, there's a businessman wasn't quite making it work here, where he lives, let's say in Poland, and he had the opportunity to get on a ship and to actually go to this awesome island far away, like a whole week's journey away by boat. And on this island, it was crazy. Like the entire island was just lined with pearls and diamonds. That's like all that line, everywhere on the street. So he gets there, he's overwhelmed. He starts picking up these diamonds, and he's so excited. He goes to the nicest hotel in this island. He says, "Here, I want the penthouse, for 6 months. I'm going to work here, try to start up my business. Penthouse, nicest suite you have for 6 months. Here you go." And he throws some diamonds that he had picked up. And the guy laughed at him. He said, in this island, that's like sand. That's everywhere. Like that means nothing to us. He says, "Oh wow, that's crazy. What is valuable to you here?" And he says, you know what's valuable to us? There's this thing called schmaltz. It's like chicken fat. It's like we love that stuff. It's like no one else knows how to make it. Sometimes visitors like you come, and we love it. We can't get enough. That goes a long way here. So the guy is like, oh, okay, that's convenient because I used to work in a factory where we produce chicken schmaltz. So he gets to work, in this island for 6 months, and he produces a whole lot of chicken schmaltz and acquires a lot of wealth, which is actually the chicken schmaltz. He literally has a ton of chicken schmaltz. He has with him everywhere. He uses it almost like a currency. It's like is very valuable, in this island. And it's now time for him to come back. And he loads up all of his valuable chicken schmaltz into his bags, gets on the boat, and comes back home. And people heard that he had acquired wealth, wrote letters home. They had this big parade to greet him. And he gets home, and he gets to his house. The kids are like, Dad, we heard you made it big. Show us what you got for us. And he opens his bag, and this putrid smell comes out of like spoiled chicken schmaltz. And he realizes, like, oh my gosh, wow, that's horrible. I was on his island for 6 months, lined with diamonds, and all I have to show for it is rotten, gross, smelly chicken schmaltz. And I think, in the words of the wise philosopher Marshall Mathers, if you had one shot or one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, did you capture it or let it slip? Yo. Right? This is our opportunity, this life. We're on this island lined with diamonds. Like, we have the ability to prepare our soul for eternity, and this limited journey that we're here for.
What are our diamonds? Our diamonds are mitzvos and the good that we do. That's our diamonds. That's the currency for the next world. But we could lose focus, just to spell it out, and be collectors of money or spoons or cars. Which
again, as we said, that doesn't transfer to the next world. Yeah. It doesn't come with us. I think there's a line, I forgot the exact wording of it, in the Talmud, that the only thing that escorts us to the next world are like our mitzvahs and maisim tovim and good acts. Like, that's forever. That impact, that's forever. That's the diamonds that we got to be accruing here in this world. So, some food for thought. I apologize, we went a couple minutes over the hour, but it's a good topic, and we appreciate all y'all's attention and time. Good to see everyone, and be healthy and safe. And God willing, we'll be back at you next week for another topic. We ended up covering everything here. And if there's any topics, put in the chat. Anything you're interested in, message us, and we'll see y'all next week. Good night.